Okay, welcome Lonnie Talbert, CEO of ATMIA. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dustin. Happy to be here, man.
So, as you know, this is our first ever podcast. We're jumping on the podcast train with everybody else.
Wow. All
and
right. I
we
feel
talked
honored.
absolutely. We talked internally and we were like, who's going to be a great guest to have on that has a great understanding of the industry, both domestically and international, because your organization is international. We're going to get into that in a minute. I just wanted to introduce myself to the audience. My name is Dustin Fusillo. I lead Next ATM. We are part of the Grant Victor family in Utah. We have two entities on the FI, the banking side of the industry, and we have two companies on the retail side. So I run one of the retail businesses along with our sister company, eGlobal, and then on the FI we have Tetralink and Next Branch. I'm going to have Lonnie introduce himself, talk about himself personally, and then, of course, the background of his organization. Take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Dustin. Well, honored, like I said, to be here and be your first guest for this, what I hope will be a long-standing podcast opportunity for Next ATM. I have a 38-year career in financial services. I started my career in 1989 actually working with HFC, which ultimately became HSBC over time. Spent 20 years between HFC and Citibank, really honing, if you will, my financial services skills, mostly in the operations space, all kinds, whether it be wires, HEA, statements, cards, payments, you name it. I was really, behind the scenes, if you will, for the most part. I then had the opportunity to get into community banking, which is really where I would say had the most fun and really was able to make the most impact. And that's because in community banking, like in the ATM space, you're actually dealing with the customer. You actually know who the customers are. A lot of my prior opportunities that I had, the customers were there and they were behind everything we did, but they weren't necessarily front of mind, unfortunately, because, we were behind the scenes, if you will. So that opportunity really allowed me to focus on, what is that customer experience? And that follows through today in the ATM industry. So right before I joined ATMIA, I had been a community bank president in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 8 years and had spent my time really helping the bank grow. We grew from around 157 million up to roughly 400 million by the time I left. And a large part of that was part of our cannabis banking program. So cannabis had been legalized in New Mexico in 2014, and we were the first bank to really jump on board and help that industry. Had about 90% market share when I left, but really the bottom line was, once again, helping a business in need. And in the ATM industry, we need the same kind of support. Believe it or not, the ATM industry has challenges getting bank accounts. I don't know why. It's a completely 100% legal business. But a lot of bankers are still stuck in the old way of, oh, well, if you own OTMs, you must be money laundering. Not true, not happen. There's always bad actors. But I had the opportunity at the end of my career in banking, the ATMIA CEO position opened up. Mike Lee, who had led the organization for 20 plus years, was retiring. And the fit worked perfectly into what I was looking to transition into. So joined ATMIA in 2022, worked with an amazing group of people, 9 of us, including myself, make 10. And we really focus heavily on ensuring that we are educating, advocating, connecting, and bringing an industry together and helping be the voice for what this industry needs on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. You accomplished so much with a team of 10 people. That's really impressive.
Oh, thanks, Dustin. Yeah, we've done a very good job. I mean, I'm one of the rookies at 3 years. Everyone else has been with the company 15 plus years. Our longest employee is Dana Benson, who's been with the company basically 2 years after it was founded, so 25 plus years, and just does an amazing job with our conferences and making sure that, we bring the industry together once a year. We pick a spot, we coalesce there, and really put together a very strong agenda and program, if you will, that looks at whatever's happening in the industry specifically at that time frame.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about ATMIA, why it was founded, how it's evolved its mission over the years, and kind of where it stands today.
Yeah. So I think ultimately when it was founded, Tom Harper, who's still one of our founding directors, we like to call him, he and a group of other people realized that the ATM industry really didn't have a voice. There were a number of organizations, independent deployers, if you will, obviously FIs that had ATMs as part of their banking strategy, part of their customer solution, and networks and providers, hardware, software, you name it, advocacy, making sure that legislation that was out there would be friendly to ATM owner and operators, which unfortunately to this day still some of it is not, and we continue to fight that battle every day. But it really was to provide a cohesive and consistent unified voice for the ATM industry. Like many associations, we are member driven. So we have to provide a value proposition to our members that say, hey, if you join ATMIA, this is how we're going to help support you. And that is a strong proposition, especially if you're, say, an independent deployer out there. Maybe you have 10 machines, maybe you have 20, 30, 50, maybe you have 100, maybe you have 1,000. You still want to be associated and be connected with like-minded individuals. That's what associations do. They bring together like-minded individuals to allow them to congregate, to talk, to network, and to really say, hey, I'm having this problem. How about you? Hey, this is important to me. Is this important to you? And that's very powerful because a lot of times, as either an independent deployer or even if you're part of a financial institution, you want to find peer groups that you can always talk to. And I feel like ATMIA does a great job in helping sort of solidify as well as bring those groups together and provide that opportunity for them.
Awesome.
We're a conduit. That was the word I was thinking of. We're a conduit for that.
You are indeed. And networking determines your net worth. And you guys provide really valuable networking within the organization and within the industry at large. So you've been around for 25 years. We've been around for 25 years. We started as eGlobal, our placement company, which was a branch off of a convenience store chain. So tell us about how our relationship has evolved over the years.
Yeah, so, Grant Victor has been an incredibly strong long-term partner. I literally sent a note the other day to Jeff and just thanked him because, you guys renewed again. And he said it's some of the best money he ever spends each year. And I appreciate that. So I think like Grant Victor, eGlobal, Next ATM, right? You look at the different companies, you are saying, what is happening in the industry that we can help be a part of? What is happening in the industry that we can help facilitate and provide sort of that solution that group needs? It's not a coincidence that you look at many companies. So look at the hotel industry. They have 25, 30, 50 brands within one umbrella. Why? Because believe it or not, some people like to stay at a certain type of hotel. And so they want to provide something to everybody. Now, I'm not a believer that you can please everybody all the time. But what I am a believer in is that you can provide those opportunities, those places for every business to find a place where they fit. And that's what we try to do. We have a number of different committees that sort of focus on those high traffic, high intensity areas where that group, that network needs a voice, whether it be security, whether it be government relations, whether it be the independent deployers or the FIs or the crypto space. So we're really trying to make sure that ATMIA provides those member-driven values to our various members so that they can participate at the level they'd like to.
It feels like you've evolved with our organization. We like to say yes, and when we can't respond to a customer request, we've in the past created a division or even a whole business around fulfilling that need. So we like to be thought leaders in the industry and kind of innovate our way through, but we also want to be responsive to the shifting customer demands. So I feel like we've aligned there both from an industry standpoint, advocacy standpoint, and then a customer service standpoint.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence, that Jeff and your guys' organization has helped us evolve over time, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence that the way you operate and your comment about you like to say yes. One of the things I say to my team all the time is, how do we get to yes, right? Can we find a path to yes? I always believe we can. I think too many times people automatically say, oh, that's the way we always used to do it, right? Now, 15 years ago, that may have worked, but today, that doesn't work. You think about it, 15, 20 years ago, there was still a payphone. Not
Sure.
anymore. You can't make a payphone call. No. You talk to my kids, they don't even know what that is. They're like, and my kids are young adults. They're like, what is that, Dad? They got a cell phone, an iPhone, whatever kind. They barely, I can't even remember the last landline I ever had in my house either. So,
Sure.
I mean, you have to evolve. Things were each time frame that we operate in has its pluses, its minuses. But to your point, if you're not constantly evolving with what the marketplace wants and needs, then you become irrelevant and you get left behind.
It's so true, and we've seen that in business. I mean, it's has a name, incumbent's dilemma. You have these just gargantuan companies, J.C. Penney, Sears Roebuck,
Yes,
Blockbuster, that don't exist anymore because they were
right.
incapable of innovating. And you struck a nerve with me because when I started my career, I was in government. And I thought, oh, I want to join government. I want to change things for the better. And I heard the answer to my questions about why we do things as we've always done it that way. And it just made me crazy. And I knew very early on that I was in the wrong place. I mean, I had folks that just, they liked following rules, they liked routine. And I was always wired in a way for questioning it, not in a way that I just refused to do it, but it's like, okay, I've done it your way. Can I experiment with a new way? Is there possibly a better way, a more efficient process? And I was able to prove that out in government, and unfortunately, it was not well received. I was able to enhance my productivity, and my boss appreciated it, but no one else did because they didn't want to have to work any harder. Because we
Right.
weren't paid for how hard we worked; we were paid for by the hour, and it was a disincentive. So that was when I shifted
Right.
from government to business. But I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, I always want to honor pasts. I always want to honor legacies and history. But I also and never want to make it a point of being like that was a mistake because I wasn't there at that time. But I also don't want to allow that to perpetuate and continue without, to your point, trying something, right? Giving something, trying something new. And listen, you know, I I feel like, R&D at times gets forgotten. And it isn't because I think people think, oh, you got to be in a lab to do an R&D. No, no, I'm talking about try a new process, try something different, give it a chance, and if it doesn't work, guess what? What have you heard? Nothing. You've actually gained some knowledge, hopefully, to your point.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've been innovative. So tell us more about the role ATMIA provides within the industry, both domestic and abroad. What's kind of your go-to value add to the financial services sector at large?
Yeah, so I think that being able to bring the voices together of disparate thought leaders, and I don't mean disparate like, negatively. I mean, each of us is in our own silo. Let's just be honest, right? We're in our own forest, and sometimes we can't see the trees because, we're in that space. And so one of the things ATMIA has done a really good job at is bringing together all of those different thought leaders and saying, hey, how can we address this problem? How can we get involved, right? We were heavy in when EV came to the United States, right? Believe it or not, we were 15 years behind Europe and international. And so Europe, believe it or not, and the European group over there, they sort of lead the charge sometimes in some of these technologies. And I think because the United States is so massive and so much money has been spent on infrastructure of certain processes that they just can't get past having to get rid of it, right? So anyway, we were heavily involved in that. We also then, about 7 years ago, got heavy into what was called Next Gen ATM. Well, Next Gen ATM now, Dustin, is now Gen. It's here. It's happening. So cash recycling, QR codes at the ATM site, ubiquitous ATM logins, sign-ins, the ability to RFID, NFC, tap, contactless, you name it. We really help put together an architecture with the help of all of our members that you could actually take that technology and make it so that anybody at any time could use your ATM. And a lot of it's being installed to this day. It wasn't a specific hardware or software or anything that we created, but we created a roadmap. And that's why I say it's no longer next gen, it's now gen. It's happening. You go to an ATM and you can use your phone. You go to an ATM and you can tap. You go to an ATM, you can use a QR code. All those sort of innovations are there. And we continue to be open-minded, right? I think a lot of people get closed off and they think if you're in the ATM industry, you got to simply be focused on cash and cash only. Well, cash is part of a payments ecosystem. Payments are global, payments are international. So let's be open-minded to say, how do we play our role in that ecosystem?
Totally. And that describes a lot of the evolution in the ATM from being a cash dispense machine into what we're calling the ATM Plus. And we've kind of dubbed that as an opportunity to showcase some of the new products coming down. We have the Genmega multifunction kiosk and the Kajera pivot from Hyosung coming out that are going to allow a host of new transaction types from bill pay, cash to card, money remittance, basically anything that you could do at a counter when you go into a grocery store or a convenience store is going to be available at an ATM in a self-service environment, which is going to create a lot of efficiencies for the customer and for the deployers.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, again, everyone thinks innovation is just about, the next new shiny toy, right? Innovation can be just innovating a process, can be innovating nothing that's ever happened, can be disrupting something that already exists, right? There are so many different ways that you can innovate. And I think that a lot of people get hung up on whatever their definition of it is, and then they get paralyzed by it. And then they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do nothing. And at the end of the day, the consumer will drive what they want. They will drive what we provide them, what they ask for, right? Because if they don't, then no one's going to just create something. The build that they will come, there is some probably logic to that at some point, but you better have some pretty deep pockets if you're going to believe in that, because it may take a while for them to come. You mentioned one of the stories about different industries and about evolving, and if you think about AOL, right? They had the first instant messenger. They owned it. It was their space, and they lost it. And they lost existence. And now they're content somewhere. And believe it or not, I still have an AOL email because I got one back in the freaking 80s. But evolve or die, innovate, be prepared for what's coming next.
Totally agree with that. And we do face that in our industry. We have a lot of folks that have been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. And they've had a successful business for that long doing what they've always done. And they're having a really hard time evolving and accepting and frankly learning all the new technologies coming out. I mean, I'm somebody who follows AI. I'm kind of a nerd about it. And it is unbelievable how rapid it's evolving. I mean, I sit on my couch on Sundays and watch YouTube videos for all the releases from Grok and OpenAI, and I am just blown away. And I'm tracking this like almost daily, and I can't keep up. So this is why I talked at the event in front of the audience about the evolution of AI and leveraging this technology. So what's your advice for deployers out there who are resistant to or just don't understand how to embrace this new technology shift that we're happening? And before you answer, the most important thing I think for audience to understand is the speed. We've seen evolutions of technologies take 10, 20 years, and we're seeing exponential growth in orders of magnitude. They're saying that we're going to see a 10x change in 3 years, where it used to take that amount of time over 10. So what's your feedback or suggestions for our deployers on that?
Well, that's a great topic. I'm like you with AI. I'm not as involved or instilled in it like you are, and I'm going to give you a call offline and ask how. I use it. I'm a fan of it. I think that again, if I could learn more, I could use it more to my benefit. But just last week, we had a webinar which had two individuals on talking about the evolution of search engine optimization connected with AI. Right now, if you go out and you do a Google search, it gives you an AI summary immediately, right away. It doesn't even take you to the top search component. It takes you to this, which is a summary of what's happening. So what I say to people who don't believe or want to, there will always be a time for whatever it is that you have, right? And if you're willing and you say, you know what, I just want to keep what I have and keep what I'm doing, then you better be prepared that there will be a time that you don't have that anymore, right? So if you're okay with that, then that's fine, right? It's like the employee that says, I just want to be meets expectations. And you're like, okay, well, guess what? Every year meets gets better. So you better at least moving to that bar, right? To that next year bar, because it's not going to stay the same. It can't. And it's funny you make that comment about 10X, because Paul, who was our keynote speaker at our conference in February, he put out a note the other day talking just about something about the number of years. It's not dog years anymore. It's like mice years. So it's gone from 1 in 7 to like 1 is 100. That's how fast things are moving. So my advice, get some knowledge. Don't be afraid. Ask some questions. Go at your own pace, but don't just write something off because you don't like it or believe in it or think you're going to need it. And that's just basically in life, right? If you don't get involved, specifically I'll focus on AI and even AI in the ATM industry. If you don't get involved at some level, you will get left behind. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And that's unfortunate, but it's true.
Totally. I remember a time when everyone talked about, oh, you have a question, just Google it. And that shifted the entire focus of marketing from search engine optimization to large language model optimization. Yes. Because the same behavior that we went from looking things up online has now turned into a LLM, which is giving you the answer that has cross-referenced it from multiple sites, so it saves you the time. It's more accurate most of the time when it's not hallucinating, which they're getting better at. Yeah. And it's a more efficient answer. So it's really incredible to see this.
Can you explain to me what an LLM is? And is that so? Like if I go to Gemini or ChatGPT today and I ask a question, are they LLMs already, or are there specific sites that are already LLMs that I'm missing?
Great question. So an LLM is a large language model, meaning that it's a predictive model based on its knowledge base. So about 4 years ago, we had enough compute to have these models literally consume every available piece of information ever written on the internet. And Google's been doing this for many years. Google has taken old text and it has these automated machines that will flip a page of a book and scan it to get it online. Well, this is our entire existence as Homo sapiens. Most of it has been uploaded. We obviously have some text that's still physical, but it was able to consume all of that information and utilize that to predict an answer to your question. So if you ask a question like, for me, I'm looking for a new vehicle. My girlfriend and I have been sharing a car for a while, so I'm using it to help me make a purchase decision based on the features of the car, but also, hey, if I buy this car this year at this mileage, have I maximized depreciation? So it's been described as having a PhD friend that has a PhD in every subject. So wow. If you want to ask somebody a question about a skincare routine or a new motorcycle or a new car or where to go on vacation, you have a PhD level motorcycle expert, travel planner, etc. Wow. And the way it works is it's not actually answering your question. It just takes all the information around the topic you've prompted it with and predicted, okay, based on this sequence of words, I think the answer to this question is X. So it's a little bit complicated in terms of how it works, but what's really interesting about AI is we keep moving the bar. If you remember back in the day when IBM Watson beat, is it Kasparov? I'm mispronouncing his name.
Kasparov,
the chess master. That was considered AI. It was like, wow, this computer is now smarter than a human. And then the next computer did it with Go. And what we learned about Go was we took a bunch of games. So I think it was the data set was about 100,000 games, and we fed it into the machine and we said, okay, here's your data set. Now become a good player at Go. Well, it wouldn't quite beat the best players. And what they did was they went back to first principles and said, well, why don't we just let it teach itself? So we said, hey, here's the game. We want you to learn this game and become the best in the world at it. So the data set it created for itself was millions of games of Go. It just played itself at Go millions and millions and millions of times, which was 10x the data set that they originally put in, and then it started crushing everybody. So what's so interesting about AI is that I feel like what we would consider artificial intelligence 10 years ago, we've blown past that. I mean, you have a technology that is communicating with you on a personal level. A lot of these deep fakes and these videos online, they're almost indiscernible from reality. So we are in an AI age, but we keep saying, well, it's not quite AGI, general intelligence yet, because we keep raising the bar. But as I said, just a few years ago, this would have been mind-blowing.
Right. God, it's just crazy. And so, again, do you create your own LLM, or are there ones out there?
You certainly can. So I've done that within Grant Victor. So we have a membership with OpenAI, and others are just as good. And what I've done is I've taken a ton of emails, data, just financial analysis, transaction analysis. So the AI has an understanding of how I communicate with customers, how I communicate with my team, the types of transactions that we do. I've uploaded a bunch of ATMIA research papers we've downloaded from your website. I've done a lot of analysis with the Fed and other government agencies regarding just macroeconomics and the impacts of finance and cash and debt. And I've fed all this data in there, and I've said, so I've narrowed the data set to our industry and our company. So when I ask a question, instead of it referencing the entire body of work for the entire ATM industry, it can look at exactly how I would like this to answer. And I've actually taken it one step further. There's a company called Tegas, and this is part of the private equity ecosystem. And what it is it's an interviewing platform of former executives at companies. So if you wanted to invest in a new industry and you don't know anything about it, the best thing to do is to have an executive that was in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years give you kind of their insights. So I was able to use our Tegas account to download 27 different interviews with CEOs, or not CEOs, executives at different levels for NCR, Diebold, Hyosung, Jamaica, all these companies. I inputted the transcripts, which were 50, 60, 70 pages, into the model, and I said, now give me a summary of your takeaways. Where do you see the industry evolving? Where do you see the opportunities? Where are the headwinds? And I fed that into the model. So this is just the beginning of me trying to educate the model on our industry and our company to help leverage that technology. So now when I have a question or a problem, it can solve it with the frame of reference of our actual organization.
That's incredible. I mean, and these are the kind of things, when we try to get this information out to people, right? I think, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for people to think. I remember the old adage, the guy who invented the buggy whip thought it would be around forever until he realized, there's a car now. And he's like, what the heck just happened, right? But, I think we want to make sure that we can get this information out in a way that people can understand it, that people can consume it, because my head hurts when I see all of these cool things, and I'm like, my God, how can I best utilize that for me? How can the industry best utilize it? And I wish we had more people. We had about 30 people on our webinar, but I think people are still, to your point, I think they're still sort of standoffish and don't believe it's going to be there. And the reality is, like you said, and like I said, you can wait, but the bus is going to have long left by the time you look, left or right. It's going to way be gone.
No doubt. 100% of the Fortune 500 companies have AI divisions now. And
Right.
about 75% of those companies have a skunkworks division where only their job is to figure out where the disruptions will take place within the industry and their company and try and mitigate that. And I think that would be a really cool opportunity for your organization to create some type of committee that could just look at this from a creative standpoint and go, okay, what if we have an exponential change in security? I mean, this is truly a fear of a lot of people. Quantum computing is the kind of a
Yes.
ancillary technology around cryptography. If we are able to solve the quantum computing processing issue right now, and a lot of it has to do with heat and power, then potentially all of the code, the 32-bit encryption, becomes null and void. Well, that's going to have a huge impact on the credit card industry in a negative way, and a positive impact on the cash industry, which is our
Right.
company, which is our industry. So, there's all kinds of risk mitigation discussions that can happen based on, okay, what happens if Russia or China solves this technology, hacks our financial system? How are we going to prepare as a financial services industry that provides cash, which allows transactions to occur via a medium of exchange in an event where you can't tap to pay and you can't Apple Pay and over the phone? So these are things that I think, obviously I don't want to be a doomsdayer, but these
Sure.
could happen, and how are we preparing for them?
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that, again, a lot of people a lot smarter than me are out there, figuring things out both to the positive and to the negative. And to the extent that, we can get some of those minds, definitely agree. And we'll mention that to David. Just in terms of overall, just ATMIA, talking about ATM AI, because, it's happening around us if we just want to be selfish about our industry on a daily basis. And I think those ATM companies that embrace it, utilize it, figure it out, are going to be light years ahead of anyone else. Will there always be someone who says, I just want to put a machine in a store and let people take cash? Okay, yeah, sure. There will be. And there will be an audience that probably will utilize that. But to the extent that you want to focus on, value for the consumer, you'll probably think ahead of that and say, I want to put a machine in a piece of real estate that provides the consumer the ability to do everything they want to do at that 30, 50, 60 second of self-service time.
Absolutely. Well, let's get our head out of the clouds for a second, bring it back
Yes,
down
crazy.
to ground level here. So looking
Yeah.
ahead in the industry, obviously I think 10 years is probably way too far in advance to have your crystal ball. So let's kind of shorten down to maybe a 3 to 5 year window. What are you excited about? Where do you feel like there's opportunities, and where are some headwinds and where are some risks that we need to kind of talk through?
Yeah, I think like anything, legislation, regulation always is a challenge, right? Whether it be PCI or TR31 or sunsetting of Windows or whatever the case may be, right? Those are always going to be out there for people to see. I think that, our own biases around how we or what we believe the evolution and how cash will continue to play in this payments ecosystem. And I think taking the blinders off and being willing to embrace all of those things that are out there. Not that you can be an expert in all of those things, because you can't, right? But currently, at light speed, crypto and stablecoin and those things are being approved left and right for sort of global consumption. I think the evolution of the ATM at becoming a truly a now-gen self-serving kiosk will continue to evolve. And I think that has to happen quickly. I think the utilization, to your point, of AI in the cash management space, right? Because everyone talks about how costly it is to be in the cash business and how costly it is. And I think there are some costs of doing business, whatever business you're in. So to the extent that you can minimize that cost component, maximize that revenue component without just sticking it to the consumer, right? Because it's easy, everybody can raise prices, anybody can do that. But I look at the real value is, raising prices commensurate with what is expected for the industry, but also saying I'm also doing everything I can on this side to make it less expensive for me to operate. I think that's huge too. I also think, the buzz today is, recycling, cash recycling. And I think that will probably become positive longer term. But I remember in the banking industry, everybody talked about deposit taking ATMs. Well, I will tell you, Dustin, by the time I left the bank, we had gotten rid of all our deposit taking ATMs because no one was using them to make deposits, even at our own bank. Now, if you make that sort of ubiquitous and that you can do universal deposit acceptance, that may help, okay? But I also think, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, a lot of our commerce being conducted electronically is already happening on your phone, at your desktop. What about if you can do all that at the ATM? If you can provide that same level of either online or phone experience at that 50 seconds that you have my attention, that I remember, oh man, I got to Zelle my kid, or I got to send some money and pay a bill, that all provides itself, that may be, I think, a big opportunity too.
That's great. And I see there's partnerships that are kind of evolving within ATM deployers and manufacturers that historically have not been there. I mean, I know that we have different opportunities to deposit and withdraw cash, and there's been suggestions around, a Zelle withdrawal and others where if you have this digital currency, but what if you need physical currency and there's a difficult way for you to extract that? What if you could go up to a Jamaica or a Hyosung ATM, scan your Zelle barcode, and pull out the balance of your Zelle account? That would be a value add. And this is the innovation that we're excited about, that we're trying to drive. But I know that your company could help support us through that. So what do you feel like your role is moving forward in helping to facilitate the evolution and innovation within the industry?
I feel like we can help be, again, a facilitator of that kind of discussion, right? So to the extent that our members bring to us, like you're doing right now, ideas or concepts or thoughts, then we can help bring together the various members that we have to talk about those things. I have a Coinbase account. Today, if I want to cash out my Coinbase account, it's very tiny, believe me, very small. If it weren't, I'd already be retired and just going to the beach every day. But if I want, to your point, cash that out, I can sell it, and then it's an electronic transfer into my banking account. But to your point, what about if I was able to do that at the point of sale at an ATM and get that cash out? Because people still want, at times, that physical piece of currency, that physical paper. So we can help facilitate those discussions. We can bring those groups of people together, those members together, and we can bring that to fruition from the standpoint of, we don't take a stand. We're agnostic, right? Because we don't want to be on any one side other than we want to be on all the right sides, right? We try not to get on the wrong side too much. But it's sometimes hard because it's a balancing act, because we don't want to pick winners and losers. That's not what we try to do. We try to pick, hey, members, and making sure we're facilitating those conversations. That's how we can play in that game.
Great. So before we finish up, I just kind of want to highlight our discussion for the audience. So your recommendations: don't continue with the status quo, encouraging folks to question the "we've always done it this way" comment, leverage technology, learn about AI, join other thought leaders within ATMIA through committees or other opportunities to network of like-minded folks to think about ways to be innovative but also solve problems. I mean, we obviously have problems with security, hacking, man in the middle. All these things have been increasing, i.e. because the technology is getting smarter, so it's facilitated that. So we have to stay one step ahead by ensuring that our security is evolving as rapidly as the hackers are. Anything that I
Thank
missed?
you. Well, that security comment, I'll make one last sort of comment on that. We have the world's largest global ATM crime database. It's called our CCMIS, and it's part of anybody who has an ATMIA membership. You now have access to that. It used to be part of ATM Security Association, which is us as well. We're the same company. We just merged everything together because we felt that our members deserved access to that. You can use that database to log, track, record, and then run trend analysis for crime and issues that are happening around the globe. So that way you can help sort of see what those trends are, and we help law enforcement. So security being as important as it is, don't lose sight of making sure you're helping catch the bad guys and not being afraid to let others know that, hey, the bad guys are out there. Let me tell you how it happened to me. You can remain anonymous if you don't want to, air your own dirty laundry. But I think it's another huge opportunity and another member benefit, honestly, that really people aren't taking advantage of as much as they should.
That's a huge help. And of course, everyone who's been in this industry has been hit at least once at different scales, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And obviously it's costly, but ultimately, if we put more data into this database, we can leverage tools to help spot trends and help law enforcement prevent this, and help the OEMs write software to prevent it. So definitely want to encourage the listeners to input this anonymously if you want to, but at least provide the data set so we can see connecting the dots.
And then we can take that, ultimately, possibly load it again with the proper security controls and anonymity and privacy into an AI database, into an AI model to say, hey, what's happening, and look for those predictive trends. Law enforcement, if they can predict what that next big thing's going to be, I don't want to get as crazy as Minority Report, okay? But I do want to get as crazy as, hey, know where the trends are going to happen so that we can sort of fend them off before they even become something bigger than they already are.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to finish up here with a couple personal questions about you,
Sure.
just get to know you on a different level. So if you're on vacation anywhere in the world, budget's unlimited, what's your spot?
Oh, God. Well, we went to Greece last year. We took a family trip, and that was just incredible. Robin and I, my wife, and our 3 adult children, we were just blown away by the culture and the beauty and the island atmosphere, the pace of life, just how the food. I think right now I would probably pick Greece. Now we're trying to go to Italy next year, so if you ask me this in a year, if you were to bring me back and say, hey, give me an update, it may be that. But I think right now I would pick Greece.
The Mediterranean diet's my favorite for sure.
Yes.
Okay, well that kind of feeds into my last question. Mountains or beach?
Yeah, beach. Well, we live
Beach.
at the beach. We're
Your
7
beach?
okay.
Okay.
miles from the beach. So it's nice to look at the mountains. When I lived in New Mexico, I knew where east was because east was the mountains, and they were beautiful. They were called the Watermelon Mountains because they were bright pink at night, the Sandia Mountains there. But yeah, we're beach people all the way.
Got it. And then the last question is, what is a hobby that you have that you really wish you had more time for? I know that you put a lot of time into serving the members of ATMIA. You travel a lot. You and David do an excellent job. But what's something that you really love doing, that you have a passion for, that you'd like to put more time into?
So my wife and I are huge animal lovers. We have a number of pets. I got into birding a couple of years ago. Now that sounds like I'm a really old person. No. I love old people. I'm getting older. I acknowledge that. But watching birds at bird feeders, we have an AI bird feeder, believe it or not, has a camera, tells me who comes to visit,
that's fun.
which is so cool. Our kids got us old school bird books of the birds and different animals in Florida. And so I'd like to do more sort of animal welfare kind of things, whether it be volunteering at different sanctuaries, if it were watching the birds more often, going out and seeing birds in their natural habitat kind of places. So that would be, I think, really cool. So hopefully, when I do have that kind of time, we're going to do more of that.
That's so cool. Yeah, I had never seen what is the bird that has the fastest wings ever? The
Oh, hummingbirds.
hummingbird. I had never
Yeah.
seen one up close, and I was house sitting for a friend. He had hummingbird feeders on his deck. They are incredible. I mean, they like
Yeah.
defy physics because their bodies, I
Yeah.
guess, weigh more than their wings, and like they have to flap at a certain. It's really impressive. So very cool for sharing. Well, Lonnie Talbert, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention or discuss before we end it?
No, I just want to say thanks to Dustin, thanks to Next ATM, to Grant Victor. It's an honor for me to be able to represent the employees of ATMIA, the members of ATMIA, and a inaugural podcast for you and your team. And count on us anytime to help any way we can. And would love to come back at some point if you'd like me to and continue our discussion, but also to help in any way we can.
Wonderful. Thank you again, sir.
Thanks a lot, Dustin. Take care.